My name's Malin, and I look smarter with glasses on. Today, I wanted to talk about why the world isn't as fucked as it seems. I know this kind of seems weird with my last video where I kind of went on a tangent about parenting and kids these days, but overall the world is actually a lot better of a place than we actually realize. On social media, there's lots of extremes. That's what gets attention. That's what draws people in. Drama, high negative things, high responses to things, conflicting kind of ideas that really trigger people and get them all raged and all bubbling with emotions. So then they keep, using these kind of things. And for me, I realized that I was getting caught up in this cycle of social media and kind of just enveloped in this kind of idea with self-help and all these kind of ideas on YouTube, and just, it kind of shaped my reality, and it was just kind of feeding these beliefs and feeding these ideas and views of the world. And it's kind of like, studies show that people are blah 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 blah, and studies show that 67% of men blah 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 blah, and studies show that if you do blah 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 blah, and it's kind of like, well, I'm not a study, and I don't actually know where I actually lie on these lines, and things aren't as clear as you're either this or you're either that, and 67% of this and the other percent aren't, so we're going to talk about this 67%. And it's like, well, that's a wide generalization of people are this or people aren't that. And it's like, we're all kind of individual and we have all our own experiences. And yes, there is some generalization, there is some kind of shared experience that we all have, because we're all human beings at the end of the day. But we have our own unique kind of set of abilities, our own kind of tendencies, our own, experiences of life and things that we know we should work on in that. And I realized getting out into the world more, doing this acting thing that I did recently, really just opened up my eyes a little bit more to the world. And I realized people are actually okay, they're getting by. Things kind of can seem like they're really bad, and social media is ruining everyone's lives, and people are so unhappy in that. But I just spent time with some people, and they're just like everyday people, apart from one who was a friend of mine, and he's very much into the kind of talking about these deeper kind of topics of life and understanding yourself better and that sort of thing. And anyway, so there's just four of us, so it was a small group, so we could be quite intimate and talk quite deeply about things when we had kind of spare moments between the shows, which we did last weekend. And I just kind of listened as I do. I kind of soak in things and just listen and observe. And I just kind of realized, people go through kind of these similar things. And I listened to these two women, and they were talking about their childbirth, their experience with childbirth, and how excited they were for it, and how they both wanted to decide all right, I'm not having kids after 35 and that. And so my friend, his partner was actually in the play as well, and so just seeing them interact was kind of funny, because especially in the rehearsals and all the leading up to it, because you can see they're very much attached to each other, and they're very they're committed to each other, and they have kids and that sort of thing. And it's just kind of nice to see that they kind of argue and bicker, and if you look on the surface, you're like, oh, they don't really get along. But then when I actually see them, when you actually look at them, and you're like, oh, they actually kind of enjoy this. They're poking fun at each other, and they're trying to stir each other up and that sort of thing. And they'll have this really extreme argument, and I'll just be sitting there oh, is something gonna happen here? And then they'll just start laughing or kind of smiling at each other, oh, we've done this so many times before kind of thing. And things aren't always perfect, and people do fight, but they still got along rather well, which is kind of nice. And they also kind of talked about acceptance, accepting yourself, and how when they were younger, in their 20s, around my age, how they were so worried about how they looked to other people, how they seemed, and they were worried about all these different kind of things. And now they're just oh, I don't really care about that. They basically said, I don't give a fuck about these things as much anymore. It's who cares kind of how I look, because now they have a partner. They both had a partner, these two women, and they kind of settled down, they had kids, they had a family, they were happy looking after their family and kind of, you know, experiencing this acting experience as well. And it was just kind of nice to see, and I was like, I realized that I had kind of been worried about how I looked to other people in that, but, you know, listening to them and just like realizing, oh, like things don't actually really matter. There's only a few things that really matter, you know, finding people that you want to spend your time with, finding things that you like spending your time doing, and just continue doing that, you know. Like in the world, in social media, there's like this push, like you have to be really rich, you have to look amazing, things have to be all this like extreme kind of sexy things and that, and it's like, well, life is kind of squiggly, life isn't really perfect. You know, you go out in nature, the trees are all kind of squiggly and wiggly and everything's moving in weird kind of ways, and if you really look at things, they're like not perfect, they're all kind of curved in weird ways and that. And then we look at social media and we look at our lives and then we think, oh, things have to be straight, things have to be this way and that way, and then we're just putting limitations on our life rather than experiencing it and just kind of accepting that this is life as it is. And you know, at the end of the day, we all kind of die. Death is inevitable, and in social media, these kind of things are pushed to the extreme, you know, like, oh, this thing is going to kill us all and it's going to kill the human race, and, you know, we've got to be worried about this sort of thing, you know, like with, you know, the recent pandemic, you know, things were really ramped up about that. But like, why are people so worried about death? You know, like, look at the way that you're living, like, you're not living much of a life, so why are you so fucking worried about dying? Because you're just clinging onto these little shallow things that don't even mean much, and your life is so terrible as it is, and like, we're gonna die someday, and if you don't realize that, then you're not actually gonna live. You know, we have to accept that we're gonna die if we actually want to live our lives properly. And I know that this sounds like a big notion, like, oh, death is such a big topic and it's such a daunting thing to kind of accept. But like, even when I'm thinking about it now, it's just like, oh, it's like we're gonna die. And maybe I don't quite realize it yet because I haven't experienced it as much in recent years, and I haven't, you know, come close to a death encounter. And it's not something that's gonna be big and like, oh, I'm gonna die, so I have to change my life, you know, kind of thing, where it's like this extreme, you know, on social media where things are kind of extreme and dramatized very much. It's just kind of like, oh, well, how do I want to spend my day today? What makes me feel better, you know? For me, I'm just like, oh, well, I kind of like, I feel better when I work out. I feel better when I meditate. I like to take 2 showers a day, one when I get up, one when I go to bed. I like to play soccer a few times a week, just go out and have a kick. It doesn't have to be for anything, but just after I just go out and have the kick, I just feel better about myself and about my life. It's not even this like happiness and like, oh, everything's so great and pleasurable. It's just kind of like, well, this is life. And it's just kind of like this acceptance, like, oh, you know, sometimes I feel sad, sometimes I feel bad, and it's almost like this nostalgia kind of feeling, like, oh, this is just life and this is how things are going. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.